in the news here having to do with the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. Just looking at the principle at stake here, if you can remove Comey and Trump out of the equation, as a constitutional attorney and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, do you believe it's acceptable for any president to publicly or privately instruct their attorney general to prosecute a political opponent and go as far as firing a U.S. attorney if they don't bring charges because they don't think the case is strong enough?
I'm glad you brought up the principle. That is exactly what's at issue here. James Comey lied to Congress. Okay, he took an oath. He said things to Congress that were simply not true. It's called perjury. A grand jury that is not, a nonpartisan, non-biased grand jury that was assembled looked at the charges and they agreed, they voted to bring an indictment of James Comey, not President Trump, not the DOJ, but a grand jury. That's how our system works. It's a very important principle for us to apply that everybody has to subscribe to the law, even a former FBI director. And he has lots to answer for. There are many things that he could have been indicted for, but the statute of limitations ran out on so many of those matters. Not here. Perjury is important. You can't, especially if you're a high official, appointed or elected official, you cannot raise your hand, take an oath, and lie to Congress. And that's an important principle, Jake, for us to advance.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you didn't answer the part about President Trump putting it all out there for everyone to see on Truth Social after pushing out the U.S. attorney, this conservative Eric Siebert. He wrote to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, nothing's being done about Comey, Schiff, and Letitia James, even though they're all, quote, guilty as hell. The president demanded justice must be served now. He mentioned Lindsay Halligan, who is now the acting U.S. attorney. And Bondi clearly got the message. She appointed Halligan U.S. attorney, despite the fact she has no prosecutorial experience. A few days later, Halligan indicted Comey. I mean, this looks like it was directed by the president. As you know, indictments are not convictions. Indictments have to do with a grand jury saying whether or not a case can be brought. It's not a finding of guilt. The defense isn't even allowed to present a case there. Don't you have any qualms about any president telling an attorney general, go after these three political opponents?
I would take issue with that. I don't think that's what he did. But what I have qualms with, Jake, is the total and utter weaponization of the Department of Justice. And Comey was a primary person responsible for that. They quite literally, for 4 years under the Biden administration, turned the entire apparatus of our judicial system against one person. His name's Donald Trump. There's never been a political figure in the history of the world who was so maligned and attacked, certainly not using the legal system of his country to go after him in the way they did. Every way possible. You and I would need 3 hours of a program to go through all the ways that they did that. They weaponized the DOJ. And so that's what Comey ultimately was the leader of and responsible for. He was one of the primary persons who did that. And I think if he lied to Congress about what he knew and when he knew it, then that is a matter that transcends politics. I think he has to be tried for that. And I expect that the jury in that case will determine that that's exactly what he did.
Well, this case is specifically about whether or not Comey lied about leaking information that what seems to have taken place during 2016, 2017, having nothing to do with Joe Biden.